why it's
Yeah.
so overrated. You know what I mean?
You're going to pay anyone as one way or another to shoot here.
One out of 100. Accent is some kind of fundamental incompetence.
Right, guys, welcome to another episode of It's More Than Just Money, where we delve into conversations with industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who are making a difference in the South African business landscape. Now, for this conversation that we're going to be having today, I need you to take out a pen and paper, especially if you're an entrepreneur who runs a small business, who runs a medium sized business, and perhaps you're in the rural areas, you are running a business that is operating in the rural areas. Today, I am sitting with the CEO of Masisizane Fund. His name is Ndumiso Zulu. He's a seasoned leader in South Africa's development finance landscape, currently serving as a key executive at Masi7 Fund, a pioneering entity within the Old Mutual Group with a strong commitment to inclusive growth and financial empowerment. Dumiso's work focuses on transforming South Africa's entrepreneurial landscape, particularly by enabling access to capital for Black owned, women owned, youth owned, and rural enterprises. Under his stewardship, Masisizane has continued its mission of catalyzing economic change. And I'm sorry for getting the name wrong. It's actually Masisizane. They've deployed over 1 billion in funding since 2007 to fuel sustainable small business growth across the country. And I'm sitting here with the man who's been part of the pioneers who have been doing that for women owned, Black owned, youth owned businesses. Hence, I said, take out a pen and paper and write down. Funding has been a key conversation everywhere. If you ask somebody, why haven't you started? The answer you always get is, where do I get the funding?
Yeah.
And how do I start? But I want us to start from the top, for you to give us a brief background about you, what you do, where you come from, how you started, and then take us through Masisizane Fund. What is it and what inspired its creation?
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Nsiza abantu.
That's the idea. So, I mean, maybe a little bit of background about me. I'll make that part very short, and then I'll delve into what we do. So, my name is Ndumiso Zulu. So, my last name tends to precede me. I am from KZN. I am Zulu. Just getting that out of the way. And that's really where it started for me. I went to school there, and then I was fortunate enough to get a bursary to study and eventually become a chartered accountant. And mine is a typical African, Black South African story, in the sense that you're growing up, you're doing decently in school, but you don't quite know what happens after matric.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to secure a bursary that sent me to UCT, and that's why I'm sitting here today. And I think that's really where my dalliance with transformation and development and really supporting potential as opposed to people that have something to put on the table on day one probably emanates from. Because if somebody hadn't said, he's got nothing to show, but he's got potential to become something or to do or to make something of themselves, let me back them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Lord knows where I would be. And I think I've found that background and the work I do today, they really dovetail in my mind. It's what attracts me to this kind of work. Before joining Masisizane Fund, I used to work in banking and in development funding. And the more I tried to run away from development funding towards more commercial funding, I kept getting pulled back. And in thinking about it, I think it goes back to where I come from and how I ended up where I'm sitting today. There's something to be said about really just taking a chance on the black child, as it were, and investing in them, even though you have no idea what that investment is going to yield, if anything at all, in 15, 20, 30 years' time, however long it takes. And I think really the business I run or I lead today is anchored in similar principles. So Masisizane was founded in 2007, and really the idea was, how do we as Old Mutual invest in the communities in which we operate, and particularly going into areas that your sort of mainstream financial sector is reluctant to go because it's risky. So if you're talking about investing in rural areas, infrastructure is not great, which means it's not conducive for business in most instances. Investing in black people, young people, women, those are people who are still by and large the most disadvantaged in this country, which means if you're talking investments, there's always a question that says, what are you putting on the table, or what's your skin in the game? Because obviously you don't want to put 100% of your money into someone's business, because they have no incentive to stick this thing out, because if the business goes belly up, only you lose money. At worst, they lose time. But we also know, in the kind of country that we live in, that the younger you are, it's likely that if you are female, it's likely that if you are black, chances are you don't have saved up capital to be able to invest in a business. Most of the time, people don't have enough to get through a month. And I'm talking about working people, let alone people who are unemployed, and you know where we are in terms of the unemployment rate. So really our business was anchored around addressing some of those challenges in our society, saying, how do we get people get started? How do we help people grow their businesses from where they currently are? So that's the work that we do. And those are the people that we fund across South Africa. And we've been doing that for the better part of 18 years, with some good success stories, with some expensive school fees we learned along the way. But that's the business you are in. Risk is part and parcel of what we do. And one of the reasons black people in particular struggle to secure funding is because we are considered riskier, because of where we live, because of the money we don't have, and in certain instances because of the experience we don't have. But to my original point, support these businesses, support these entrepreneurs on the basis of the potential or what they could become, as opposed to what they are not today. Because 10, 20 years from now, we'll still be talking about there aren't enough businesses to fund. So to your original question, funding is an issue because of those underlying issues. So how do we tackle them and try to solve them, instead of just pointing at them and saying they are issues?
So you've dispersed more than $1 billion to SMEs in the last 18 years. I mean, that's incredible. But what type of businesses do you then typically fund?
Sure. So, I mean, I think we've evolved over the 18 years. I think initially we invested quite heavily in the agri sector, and the reason we liked it,
Agri sector.
agri, yes. So in fact, our brand for the longest time had a picture of a milli meal that some of my team members are not crazy about. And the reason we opted and the reason we had opted for the agri sector at the time is because it still is. In fact, it's not as transformed. So that was the one attraction. We had the opportunity to influence or drive transformation in that sector. But because of where agribusinesses are located, it's largely in rural areas or peri-urban areas. But also it's where you can get a lot of women participation in business, something that for historical reasons didn't happen in this country. So that was the draw card. But over time, we then expanded our portfolio as we grew and as we learned some lessons, to saying actually there is a whole host of other industries that Black South Africans could partake in with the right partner, with the right funding support. How do we then help them get there. And because of that, we've expanded to sectors like manufacturing, things like supply chain. We have quite a chunky portfolio just around your retail service stations. So chances are you filled up your tank at one point or another in one of the sites that we funded. You just don't know about it. So we've funded businesses across a variety of industries. In fact, our strategy from 2022 had been actually don't even focus on sectors, focus on the entrepreneur. If they are majority PE owned and all that other criteria that I outlined, we will then sit across from you and see, is there a business case here? Is this business viable? Are you the kind of person we'd want to partner with? And we take it on that basis.
What are we looking at in terms of the application to approval process? For small businesses that are looking to access funding, from the moment they apply to the moment the funding is granted, what is the process like, and how long does it take, and how does one get up from where they're sitting now saying, let me go apply?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a question I also get everywhere because it's fundamental. So I think as a start, how long it takes, it depends on your readiness as the entrepreneur. You drive the process. So
funding readiness? Or?
So your readiness, not only just for funding, but also to apply. I think sometimes people think if I send an email, say, hi, Ndumiso, I'm looking for funding, I've applied. At best, you've expressed interest. So application to me is you coming with a business plan saying, this is who I am, this is my business, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it, this is who my target market is, this is the size of that market, and here's how I'm going to capture this size of the market with my product or service. Because remember, for pretty much every industry, there's already people playing in that space. So if you're saying you have an idea for making a chair that is a lot better than the ones we are sitting on, what's stopping the person that made this chair from making a similar product? So how do you differentiate yourself? So those things, in my mind, are actually what makes up an application as opposed to a conversation that says I'm looking for funding. And that's important because if you have that, then the conversation shifts from...
So what are the documents then?
Yeah.
If you would say you consider this an application, I heard you mention a business plan. What else is a business plan?
So
application form?
Yep. So application form, we will give that to you. But the most important thing is the business plan. And then as part of that, FICA, which I know most entrepreneurs hate, but I always say to them, it's one of those things you can't do away with. So just
love
get
and
it.
Hate relationship.
It's a love and hate relationship. It's an arranged marriage you can't get out of, and there's a reason for that. So if you ensure that your business's financial affairs are in order on day one, it means then the conversation you and I have changes from an administrative one to a business to a strategic one that says, I see your business plan. I think this is the best funding instrument in the circumstances, and I'm sure we will touch on how one differentiates, as opposed to saying, I now need your proof of address. I now need your SARS compliance. What does SARS compliance even looks like? Are you a vet vendor? Why do I need to be a vet vendor? And all of those things. So if you get that boring admin stuff out of the way before you apply, it means you eliminate the back and forth. We can literally go from you sending this information to us going to our deal forum and at a high level saying, this is the business, do we have appetite? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then we can actually delve deep into what we call a due diligence, where we now basically turn your business upside down. We want to understand the risk. We want to understand who your suppliers are. We want to understand who your customers are. Do you have underlying contracts already, or have you received letters of interest depending on the business you are in? So my advice to entrepreneurs is always this: the more prepared you are administratively, the shorter the time from approval from application to approval is going to be. And I find that's one of the biggest pain points in the application process, not just in this business I run today, even when I still worked for development funding institutions, that was always the stumbling block. People come and say, I have a business, I need funding. In their minds, they've applied, but I'm saying, I still don't know who you are. And the reason that's important, ultimately, the decision I need to make or the determination I need to make is one, is there a business case here? And your business plan speaks to that. Is there somebody I want to be in bed with? Your FICA, your compliance
Not
information,
literally.
not literally. Oh, your information, your track record speaks to those aspects.
Yeah.
Because those, in my mind, are the two biggest boxes you need to tick. The rest of it is then just formalities. What's the right structure? What's the funding instrument? But what you want to get a potential funder very comfortable on very quickly is that they are not taking on undue risk by backing you as an entrepreneur, as a business. And that comes down to, is there a potential that once I give you my money, then somebody you owe from 2 years ago is now going to take you to court and then take the money that I gave you to run a business to now settle their debt? Because then how do you pay me back? So now instead of you and I talking about funding your business, we're talking about the legal process for recovery, and it becomes messy. So get that stuff out of the way quickly. Then we can talk about the exciting bit, which is your business. What do you do? What does growth look like? And what does the right support model from us as a funding partner look like?
Right. So, guys, you heard that. One, sending an email does not mean that you have applied for funding. You have to follow through the process, fill in an application form, develop a business plan, have a business case for whatever it is that you want to do, and also get the FICA stuff out of the way. All your FICA documents, go through it, get all your SARS clearance stuff out of the way. Get an accountant to assist you if you must. So I've got a two-pronged question for you, but before we get into it, I want to remind you guys that this episode is brought to you by Addprop. It is a property listing company where you can go on to addprop.co.za, list your property for rental, list your property for sale if you are selling your property, be able to manage your property investment portfolio using the platform. And if you are a service provider, be it in the maintenance space, you're a painter, you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you would be able to also list your services there. And the large number of property investors and property owners on the platform would be able to request for your services using the platform. Now, the platform is revolutionizing how we do property in the country, and it is making it easier for everyday people like you and I to be able to list properties, to find tenants, and to find buyers. Now, the two-pronged question that I had for you, one was, is the funding only available to people that have running businesses already, or can a model be funded for as long as it's an idea that's feasible? And then two, I would like you to unpack the funding landscape in South Africa, especially for Black-owned and rural businesses.
Okay. I always like to start with the easy question, but out of these two questions, I don't know which one is the easy one. So maybe let me start with the last one, and then keep me honest and make sure that I answer the first. You may have to remind me what it was by the time I'm done. So, I mean, in terms of the funding landscape in South Africa, you can probably group it into maybe 4 or 5 buckets, give or take. The most common one is obviously your commercial funders, your commercial banks. You go to a bank, you say, I'm looking for funding, and then you get some kind of a loan, right? That's the one bucket. The other one, so we're talking about sources or the doors you can knock on. We will talk about what does the underlying product then look like in each scenario. Or you can go to what we call venture capital funders. And those typically focus on sectors that are poised for very high growth. So it's very high risk, because to your question about funding an idea, that's really where venture capitalists kind of start. So imagine the first person that wanted to create a mobile phone in the era of, Mr. Phones and and those fixed line telecoms, and they said, actually, we want something you can walk around with. At the time, as a novel idea, you can imagine skeptics going, that will never work. If it could be done, why wasn't it done before? And then you had that one or two people that said, actually, I don't know if there's value in this. I don't even know if it can be done at all. But if they can get it right, the opportunities for growth, I can make 100, 1,000 times the money I invest today. So that's how venture capitalists work, but they also target sectors that are very high growth. So if you want to start a book printing business, for example, don't knock on a venture capitalist door. They will always say no, not because your business is not viable, not because the business doesn't make sense, because the business doesn't suit their type of business.
High risk, high scale.
High risk, but also very high return, because the two things must talk to each other. If it's just high risk, but the return is not high, then why am I risking my money? Right? But what you'll find is that maybe with the book manufacturing business, printing business, it's not as high risk and high potential, but it's stable, right? If you're printing books for the Department of Education and they supply them to school kids across the country, you have a captive market, right? They're not going to pay you a lot of money, but they will pay you enough for you to recover your costs and maybe make a small return. So a traditional bank might actually want to fund your business because it's safer from a credit risk perspective, whereas a venture capital is going to say it's not worth my while. Because I want to get multiples of what I invest, 100, 1,000. If I invest here, maybe you'll pay me 10% interest. It's not worth it. So that's the venture capital side of things. And then on the other side, and this is particularly if you're starting up a business, maybe you have an idea. A colleague of mine likes to call it friends, family, and fools money. And that's really people who buy into your idea just because either they know you or they like you or they trust you. So family,
Or you've got
friends.
a beautiful smile like me.
If it works, do that. And those people typically invest in your idea. Other people call them angel investors. So again, you have an idea.
So you are answering the question.
I'm blending them into one, right? I tend to do that. I'm saving you time. I'm saving you money. And those people then would probably not give you a lot of money, but they help you get started. Because you can then sit across from a potential funder, from a potential venture capitalist, for example, and say, here's a prototype of what I want to do. I've invested my own money that I sourced, whether it's crowdfunding or whatever the case is. I have proven that this product actually works. I now need you to find me to scale up. And if the scale makes sense, if the potential return makes sense, a typical venture capital funder would be interested, but you kind of need an angel investor to get you started, right? And then you get what we call development funding institutions. You have the likes of NEF. I'm sure I can name drop this because they are government owned. So you and I kind of own them in any event. Your National Empowerment Funds, your IDCs, that really provide funding to businesses that must be viable on the one hand, but with a developmental mandate. Maybe they have a huge potential for job growth. Maybe they are catalytic in a sense that the existence of that business actually enables other businesses and ecosystems to develop around the area. So it makes sense for them. Again, you need to understand what your business offers in terms of what those guys are trying to do, so that you match your need to the funder who has similar objectives. Because I always say one of the reasons people get rejected for funding you are knocking on the wrong door for the right opportunity. So that's why the question you asked is fundamental and very important. As an entrepreneur, do you understand what the type of funding you require is and where that funding can come from? So now this is a segue into different types of funding available to entrepreneurs over and above where you can get them from, which is what we just discussed. The way you can fund a business is really grouped into two things. It's equity or owner's capital, which is usually the small bit for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then the other is debt. This is now people who don't know you from a bar of soap giving you their money and hoping you're going to pay them back. And again, how do they get that comfort? It's that mysterious document we spoke about called the business plan, because it tells them what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and why does it make sense that your business would potentially thrive.
So where do you guys fall in? Do you guys fund from early stage, or is more on the growth phase of the business?
So primarily on the growth phase of the business. It may have some late early stage elements depending on the type of business, but our sweet spot is really around helping you grow your business. It does then say, and I think it's a challenge to the overall financial sector as an industry in South Africa, for you to get businesses to grow, somebody must have helped those businesses to start. Who is that somebody? I spoke about angel investors now.
Venture capitalists.
Exactly, but remember they have a very limited scope in terms of who they
High
fund. And also, given the kind of society we are in, your angel investors, your friends, family, and fools
And your customers.
need to have, yes, but you have to offer something to your customers first. And how many people can readily give you R1 million today to risk on a business venture? Probably not that many. How do we bridge that gap? Because what then happens is, it's almost like when you have just finished university and you wanted to get credit, and then your retail shop says, I can't give you credit because you don't have a credit record. And then you say, but for me to have a credit record, somebody must give me credit first.
Yes, like go buy a fridge.
Right? So go buy a fridge so that somebody can say, oh, at least I can see somebody gave them credit and they paid it back. But somebody has got to start. And I think that early stage in angel investor bit is something we don't have a lot of in this country. And it's something we need to solve for somehow.
Okay. So perhaps tying into that, help us understand the difference between grants, loans, and equity funding.
Sure.
In your experience, which is best suited for early stage versus growth stage of the business?
So grants everybody loves.
Of course, we all
because
love
you don't
grants.
have to pay it back.
Hey, it's funeral matri fee.
I have a love and hate relationships with grants.
Yeah.
One, because necessarily they tend to be very small, hence the 350.
50,000.
What can you do with 350 as a person? What can you really do with 50,000 as a business? So grants are there.
350 for individuals, 50,000 for a business.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see what you did.
So grants for early stage make sense because you can commit to returning the capital anyway, because you're still starting out. You still need to prove the concept of the business.
Sure.
So grants make sense for businesses that are really just at conceptualization or startup stage. If you have a business that needs to grow, and then you say to me you need a grant, I then ask the question that I'm not popular for, that says, do you then have a viable business case? Because a viable business case says, if I put money into this business, they will be able to pay it back and still grow with what they make. If not, then you have a problem.
Even if it's a grant.
The other thing I don't like about grants is, remember, you don't have to pay the grant back, but you also don't want to fall into the trap of being grant dependent. In other words, this business only works if I get free money. Because then again, is that business viable?
So let's get into loans, equity funding,
So
stage growth phase.
yeah, so equity funding really says you either provide your own money or you get somebody else to co-own and co-fund this business with you.
That's selling shares, basically.
Yes. Unlike debt, which tends to be short-term in nature, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or whatever the case is, equity doesn't have a repayment period. So you can invest here for 10, 20, 30 years or whatever the case is. It's a long-term play. So that's the one risk. Secondly, if this business had to be wound up or had to be closed down, equity owners get paid right at the end. So you'll pay your employees, you'll pay your SARS, you'll pay your debtor, your debt providers or your lenders. And then whatever remains, that's what the equity holder gets, if there's anything that still remains. So that's the risk in providing equity. But the other side of it, unless you put your own equity in the business, nobody's going to give you debt. Because remember what I said earlier,
Skin in the game.
skin in the game. If I'm putting in all the money, if somebody comes and offers you a lucrative job, you're going to close this business and take that job because you got nothing to lose. So skin in the game is
50,000
important.
grand, 100,000 salary.
You see now. But again, it also then speaks to one of the things you want to zoom in on very early on as a potential funder.
Yeah.
Is the person in this for the long term? Do they believe in this business? Is this what they really want to do with their life? Or are they doing it because they think they can make money out of it? Because what happens if the money doesn't come as quickly or as lucratively as they thought? If they quit, my money is already in. What happens to my money? So that's risk from a lender's perspective. Debt is the easiest and most common form of funding because it's quick to close. The relationship is very simple. I give you money today. You repay me at very specific dates, either monthly, every 3 months, or whatever the case is, or you pay me at the end of 5 years, or whatever the case can be. And then there are conditions to that debt. One of those conditions that entrepreneurs love to break is once I've given you debt, before you can go get debt elsewhere, you need to come to me and get my consent. And people say, but it's my business. Why am I getting your permission? Because you are primarily running your business through my funding. If you then go and increase that funding, you now owe me and somebody
another
else.
person, which increases the risk of me getting my money
You
back.
might not be able to pay me now because you got to split your money between me and this person. So before I can say it makes sense for you to get additional debt, let me see what you are projecting to make and whether I'm comfortable that I'll still get paid. There's a whole other host of conditions that are attached to debt. And I find entrepreneurs don't always familiarize themselves with those conditions until they break them. At which point we are now not partnering, we are now fighting.
Yes.
And that's a problem in any partnership.
So, guys, remember that this conversation is brought to you by addprop.co.za. Head out to addprop.co.za. If you got a property to list for rental or for sale, a property portfolio to manage, you'll be able to invoice your tenants, manage your portfolio, get updated on their leases, and be able to have banking records because the system will help you develop financial statements as you use it. And if you're a service provider, please register on Addprop so that you can have access to a great range of property investors and owners that are looking for your services. So there's a lot of buzz around scaling. Is a business only deemed successful if it scales? It can't be a normal successful business.
Yeah. It depends on the kind of business you run, right? Some businesses need scale to be able to be profitable, for example. So then scale is a necessity as a matter of survival. You'll find that a lot of businesses make losses initially as they build up. You might have heard the story of Time Bank, in that in the first few years, in fact, it might still be the case now, they are still not profitable yet. The subscriber base or the customer base needs to grow to a certain point before it becomes profitable. So if you never reach that scale, then your business is never going to be viable, which is quite different if you're running, for example, a retail service station. You order the fuel, you sell the food inside sort of the
Convenience.
the
side of
convenience or
business.
forecourt. That's your business, right? It's not a business of scale, it's a business of efficiency, right? So, and everybody, I suppose, as a people, we're obsessed with size. The bigger, the better. It doesn't always work. So you need to look at the kind of business you have and say, where is it most profitable? Because there is such a thing that your business is most profitable when selling 50,000 units of whatever you sell.
If you sell more than
If you now take it to 100, your costs go higher, or your costs now start to grow at a higher rate than the profit you are making, at which point it doesn't make sense. So
how then does an entrepreneur actually know they're ready to scale?
so
And what are the risks of growing too quickly?
one of the biggest risks of growing too quickly is burning through cash. So you can find a business that is profitable, but that doesn't have cash. Profitable businesses have failed, and everybody said, but these guys are showing 5, 10, 50 million of profit. How did they go belly up? You're showing the money, it's theoretical money, or it's accrual of profits. It's not cash profits. And if you don't have the cash, then you don't have the money. And if you don't have the money, you're not going to survive, because your suppliers need to be paid in money, not theoretical profit. Your employees want to get paid at the end of the month. You're not going to show them your profit and say, I'm going to pay you tomorrow. So the ability to generate cash in the business is critical to a certain extent, more than just being able to show profit. So the risk of growing too quickly is growing your revenue and maybe even growing your profit, but not your cash generating ability.
So I want us to bend through the next couple of questions.
Cool.
All right. What role does personal finance habits and credit worthiness play in whether a business gets funded or not? We talked about this earlier.
That's my favorite question. So
I
I'll make
know.
it very
That's
short. A potential funder into your business probably doesn't know you from a bar of soap. All they have as a reference point around whether you are going to be good or you are going to be able to manage their money effectively is how you manage your own money. If you're not good with your own money, where you have a personal interest, it's highly unlikely that you're now going to be good managing my money. And if I don't get that comfort, I'm not going to give you my money. It's really that simple. But also, it increases the risk. Let's say maybe you are heavily indebted because you drive the latest GTR, you live in a penthouse for whatever reason. Eventually, what you might start doing is dipping into the business, which is funded with my money as a funder, to maintain your lifestyle. That's the risk.
So many entrepreneurs, based on what you've just said, mix personal and business finance. What are some of the practical ways to draw that line?
Sure. Separate bank accounts. One, this is the business account, this is the personal account. And in the business account, can we please not see your own car installments or school fees going out of there? But also separate yourself in terms of how you structure the business from the business. You are a natural person. Business is a juristic person. Register a company or a closed corporation or whatever, so that you separate it from you as a person. It's good for the business, but it's also good for you personally. If you don't do that, the debts that the business incur might actually lead to you losing your personal assets that have nothing to do with the business because you didn't separate the two.
Why is financial discipline in both personal and business life and non-negotiable for success?
Again, it goes back to our original discussion around your financial affairs. If you're not disciplined in how you manage finances, you are going to squander them. One of the easiest things you'll ever do as a person, whether in your personal capacity or your business capacity, is spend money. Spending money is the easiest thing you can do. You swipe, you are on your phone, it's gone.
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats, generating that money or making it back is the challenge. So if you're not disciplined around, if I spend this, what does it get me or my business? You'll find yourself with a lot of needs for the business to satisfy and no more cash left to satisfy it. And that's why businesses fail.
What are some of the common mistakes you've seen entrepreneurs make when applying for funding?
We've spoken about this one. One, sending a query and thinking it's an application. But it's also not staying the course. It can be frustrating. It's this document, but this document is 4 months old. It must be 3 months old. And then you give up. Because if you're giving up at the application stage, you're already saying to me, at the first sign of hardship in this business, you're going to bail.
Do I need to have a perfect business plan to get funding?
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing as a perfect business plan. I just need a business plan.
Business plan, it should make sense.
For those who don't have an extensive financial history, how can they still show they're fundable or viable?
Yeah. I mean, you touched on it earlier. Guys, get help. The cost of getting an accountant, of getting a business advisor is a lot lower than the cost of not doing it when you now have a business, but you're not running it right because you didn't want to pay for the right kind of financial support or advice. You got to spend money to make money.
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about funding that you wish you could correct?
I'll pick one.
Yeah.
They don't want to fund me because I'm black.
Ooh, that's a big one. Can you go deeper there, Papa?
Everybody who is in the business of funding is in the business of making money out of funding. Money doesn't have color. That's the first thing. So when I'm making money, I don't care what the person on the other side looks like. That's the first thing. Second, you live in a country that is 80+% black. If you're running a business and you're saying, I don't want to fund black people, you've literally cut your own market by 80%. Who on earth would do that?
They wouldn't.
There you go.
Because they're in the business of making money via the interest and getting paid back.
Yeah. So they don't want to fund you. Trust me, there's a whole host of reasons they might not want to. In my mind, the color of your skin is right at the bottom.
So the color of your skin is right at the bottom of the reasons why institutions might not fund you. But whenever an institution is not giving you a loan or giving you funding, they always provide reasons why. And I think as an entrepreneur, the biggest thing you can do for yourself is always ask, what can I fix for me to be able to come back and get the funding? I might not be ready now, but what do I need to do to get ready? And one of the places you can actually do that for yourself and for you to be able to buy property is going to addprop.co.za. We will be putting in tools for you to be able to get funding, specifically for those of you who are looking for funding to buy property, to grow your portfolio, to buy investment property. We are putting in tools for you to be able to do that in the property space, for you to scale, for you to grow. We are with you. So in your experience, Mr. Zulu, what else beyond funding do small businesses need to truly succeed?
Get the easy, the boring things out of the way.
The easy, boring things. What are those?
Compliance is one of the biggest pain points. They hate doing it, and I understand why.
Admin.
It's admin. But if you don't do the admin, you're never going to get to the money that you're looking for. I mean, in my previous life, I used to sit in tender or bid committees to approve tenders.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed at how many people don't even get to the technical evaluation stage because people are not doing something as simple as providing a certified copy of their ID. They just send an ID copy. You failed because you've not met the requirements. So
And it's a small thing. You
It's-
find this guy qualifies with everything. Just
with
that ID
everything
part.
else, you've spent months putting the tender together, and then you fail because you don't provide a document that you have that you can get for free from your local police station. So the things you don't like oftentimes are the things that enable you to get to or to do the things you actually want.
Sure. So you have to do the things that you don't like first so that you can comfortably do the things that you like.
Do what you need to do so you can be able to do what you want to do.
And you are saying the admin part of getting ready is the biggest part.
It's one of the biggest things. We've spoken about financial discipline. We've spoken about providing information to your lenders. Because remember, you run the business, I'm not there.
Yes.
But if you are now not sending me bank statements like we agreed, if you're not sending me your financial information, I'm saying, if you don't know how your business is performing financially, how do you know you're doing the right things? How do you know your business is still viable? And
Yes.
how do I know you're going to pay me at the end of the month?
Yes. So how can institutions like Masisizane partner with platforms like Addprop, or it's more than just money to drive practical impact at
Yeah.
scale?
So I think the starting point is where we are today. One, creating awareness. There is funding available for entrepreneurs, particularly if you're a young person, if you're a black person. And then the next phase becomes, how do you practically get there? We understand that, funding or finance is not second nature to most people. So funding readiness, financial education are things that are available across different platforms, but people don't always know where to find them. I think this is actually a great platform to actually create that awareness, because everything else, if you don't know what you don't know, then how do you change?
So if you were to be given an opportunity to speak to through that camera as we are drawing to a close, young entrepreneur sitting at home and they're saying, hey, Makeba, I'm in the rural areas. Things are tough. I don't even have food to eat tomorrow. Or I'm in the township. I'm black. Or I'm white. I'm not just as privileged as other white people. Or I'm Indian. I don't have businesses. How do I start? Or the young Makeba sitting and looking for an opportunity. Given an opportunity to speak to them. What would be your words of encouragement, and what would be the one thing that you think they can start doing as soon as they're done watching this interview?
Sure. It all starts with an idea. What is it that you would like to do? And I think most people, as soon as you ask that question, then it goes to the circumstances you've highlighted and then say, well, because I don't have resources, I can't do anything. Because remember, you don't want to start a business because you want to have something to eat. You want to start a business because there is a need that you can fill and make money while you're doing it. So the nice thing about ideas is that they are free. So have an idea, have 10 different ideas, right? And you can discount whatever doesn't make sense. So you got to start with what you want to do or would like to do before you get to how do I practically do it. I think one of the biggest disablers is despondency and disappointment. It's understandable. Every time you knock on the door and it gets closed on your face, at some point you just stop knocking. And what you need to do is keep knocking, because that one door that you says is not worth it might just be the door that actually opens for you. So if you want to run a business, have a business idea, write it down, and then really flesh out how you're going to do it. At the end of the day, every business goes to a stranger with a piece of paper and walks away with a 10, 20, 50 million rand check.
How do people find you? And how do they find Masisizane Fund?
Yeah. So we're on LinkedIn, we are on It's not Twitter anymore, right? It's X. We
X.
are on, I have feelings about that name, but story for another day. We're on Facebook, but also on our website. In fact, maybe the easiest thing you can do is just go Masisizane and Fund on Google. You'll find our link, you go to our page, and we take it from there.
All right, guys. And that was the conversation with the CEO of Masisizane Fund, Mr. Ndumiso Zulu. I prefer to call him Makeb. I think it's short. It's long and short at the same time. But thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and for sharing value with our audience and our listeners. We've got a large number of people that are in business, people that are in property, that are actively tuned in to the show. It's people that are running businesses. It's people that have ideas, or perhaps it's people that are given ideas on the platform.
Yeah.
Either way, it's people that are, I believe, some of them, as they are watching, they are already searching what Masisizane Fund is. Guys, when opportunities are brought to you, take advantage of them. You'll never lose anything from taking advantage of opportunity. Here's an opportunity. It has been put on the table for you. The CEO himself came to share that value with you. Reach out to them and get your business funded. My brother, do you have any last words you want to say?
Thank you for having me. And funding is not as big a problem we sometimes think it is. We are not always knocking on the right doors. We are not always talking to the right people. So at least I'm here today. I'm one of those people who want to talk to. And sometimes the answer will be no. But just because it's not today doesn't mean it's going to be no tomorrow. Keep knocking on those doors. One of those doors is the door for you, but you'll never know unless you knock.
No today does not mean no tomorrow. Keep knocking, and one of those doors might open for you. From myself and my team broadcasting from Johannesburg, South Africa, it's more than just money. We'll see you in the next episode. Remember to visit addprop.co.za. Peace out.